The rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan penthouse, blurring the lights of the city into messy streaks of gold and gray. Adana stood by the marble island in the kitchen, her hands trembling just a little as she chopped green onions. She had to be careful. The knife was sharp, and she couldn't afford to cut herself. Not today. Today was their 3rd anniversary. She had spent the last 5 hours cooking. The air in the apartment was thick with the smell of galbijajim, the sweet and savory braised short ribs that Ji-hyun used to love. She had even bought the expensive bottle of wine he liked, the one that cost more than her father's old car back in Georgia. She placed a hand on her stomach, rubbing the fabric of her oversized sweater. 3 months. She was 3 months pregnant, and tonight she was finally going to tell him. The sound of the front door unlocking made her heart jump into her throat. She quickly wiped her hands on her apron and smoothed down her hair. She wanted to look perfect. She wanted him to see her, really see her, the way he used to before the business took over, before the coldness set in. Ji-hyun, she called out softly, walking toward the entryway. I made dinner. It's ready whenever you. Her words died in her throat. Ji-hyun was there, shaking the rain off his black trench coat. He looked as devastatingly handsome as always, with his sharp jawline and cold, dark eyes. But he wasn't alone. A woman stood next to him. She was tiny, with skin like porcelain and long, silky black hair that fell to her waist. She was wearing a white fur coat that looked like it had never touched a speck of dirt. Her arm was looped through Ji-hyun's, tight and possessive. Adana froze. She felt the blood drain from her face. Ji-hyun, who is this? Ji-hyun didn't even look at her. He shrugged off his coat and handed it to the woman, who draped it over the rack like she lived there. Adana, this is Minhee. She's going to be staying with us for a while. Staying with us? Adana's voice was barely a whisper. But it's our anniversary. Minhee let out a small, musical laugh. It sounded cruel. She looked Adana up and down, her eyes lingering on the stained apron and the frizzy curls escaping Adana's bun. Ji-hyun, Opa, you didn't tell me you had a housekeeper, and she speaks English so well. Adana felt like she had been slapped. She looked at her husband, waiting for him to correct her, waiting for him to say, no, this is my wife. Ji-hyun finally looked at her. His eyes were empty, cold, like looking into a frozen lake. Don't just stand there, Adana. Get her bags from the hall. They're heavy. What? Adana took a step back, her hand instinctively going to her stomach again. I'm not. I'm your wife, Ji-hyun, not your maid. Ji-hyun's face hardened. He stepped closer, towering over her. The smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the woman's floral perfume, making Adana's stomach turn. I'm tired, Adana. I don't have time for your drama. Minhee is the most important person to me right now. If you want to stay in this house, you will make yourself useful. Now get the damn bags. He didn't yell. He never yelled. His voice was low, smooth, and deadly. It was the voice he used when he was closing a deal that would ruin someone's life. Minhee smirked, stepping out of her heels. Be careful with the red one, she said, not even looking at Adana. It's vintage Chanel. Adana stared at them, her breath coming in short, painful gasps. The man she loved, the man she was carrying a child for, was looking at her like she was nothing more than dirt on his shoe. Move, Ji-hyun snapped, pointing at the door. Adana's legs moved before her brain could stop them. It was a habit, fear. She walked past them, out into the hallway. The red suitcase was there. It was huge. She grabbed the handle and the weight of it pulled on her shoulder. A sharp pain shot through her lower abdomen. She gasped, dropping the handle. Quietly, Ji-hyun shouted from inside. I have a headache. Adana bit her lip until she tasted iron. She gripped the handle again, tears blurring her vision. She dragged the heavy bag into the apartment, the wheels thumping loudly against the floor, sounding like the heartbeat of a dying thing. Pause. Listen to me. I know you want to look away. I know your blood is boiling right now watching Adana get treated like garbage in her own home. But you can't leave her. Not now. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Are you in Houston, London, Lagos? Let me know. Rate this start 1 to 10. Be honest. Is Ji-hyun the worst husband you've ever seen? And listen close. If you don't hit that subscribe button for timeless K-love right now, you are leaving Adana alone in that penthouse with those monsters. Do you really want her to face that pregnant and alone? Don't be the reason she loses hope. Hit subscribe. Join the family. Let's get her justice. Adana dragged the suitcases into the living room, her breath hitching in her chest. The pain in her stomach had settled into a dull ache, a terrifying reminder of the secret she was keeping. She looked up to see Ji-hyun and Minhee sitting on the white leather sofa, her sofa, the one she had picked out 2 years ago. Minhee was leaning her head on Ji-hyun's shoulder, her hand resting casually on his thigh. Ji-hyun was relaxed, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked more at peace than Adana had seen him in months. "Put them in the master bedroom," Ji-hyun said, taking a sip of his drink. He didn't even turn his head. Adana felt the room spin. The master bedroom?" "Yes," Minhee piped up, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Opa says it has the best view of the city. I love waking up to a view." "But that's our room," Adana said, her voice shaking. She looked at Ji-hyun, pleading with her eyes. "Ji-hyun, please, where am I supposed to sleep?" Ji-hyun set his glass down on the coffee table with a sharp clink. He turned to face her, his expression bored. "There's a pull-out couch in the study or the guest room down the hall. I don't care, Adana, just get out of my sight." "You're kicking me out of my own bed?" Adana asked, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. "For her." Ji-hyun stood up abruptly. He crossed the room in 2 long strides and grabbed Adana by the upper arm. His grip was tight, bruising. "Stop it," he hissed, his face inches from hers. "You are lucky I let you stay here at all. You bring nothing to this marriage. No money, no connections, nothing. Minhee. She understands me. She fits in my world. You are just a mistake I made when I was young and stupid." Adana stared at him, her heart shattering into a million pieces. "A mistake," she whispered. 3 years, Ji-hyun. I have loved you for 3 years. And I am bored," he said simply. He shoved her away. Adana stumbled back, catching herself on the wall. "Take her bags to the master bedroom, then serve dinner. Minhee is hungry." He turned his back on her and sat down next to Minhee again. The other woman giggled and whispered something in his ear, and Ji-hyun smiled. A real smile. Adana stood there for a long moment. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw the vase on the table at his head. She wanted to tell him about the baby. "I'm pregnant," she wanted to yell. "I'm carrying your child." But she looked at his back, at the way he leaned into the other woman, and she knew. He wouldn't care. Or worse, he would tell her to get rid of it. He would see the baby as another mistake, another burden. She swallowed the scream. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Yes, Ji-hyun," she said quietly. She grabbed the handles of the suitcases again. She dragged them down the hall, past the photos on the wall, photos of their wedding day where Ji-hyun looked stiff and she looked like she was in a fairy tale. She dragged them into the master bedroom. The bed was made with the silk sheets she had washed yesterday. The room smelled like lavender, her favorite scent. She left the bags by the closet. She felt sick, physically sick. She walked back to the kitchen. Her hands were shaking so bad she could barely hold the ladle. She scooped the gal by Ji-hyun into bowls. She arranged the side dishes, kimchi, spinach, beans, sprouts on a tray. She carried it all out to the dining table. "Dinner is ready," she said, her voice hollow. Ji-hyun and Minhee moved to the table. Minhee sat in Adana's chair. Ji-hyun sat at the head of the table. Adana stood by the kitchen door, waiting, like a servant, like a ghost. Minhee picked up her spoon and took a sip of the stew. She made a face instantly. "Ah!" she groaned, dropping the spoon. It clattered loudly against the bowl. "Opa, this is disgusting. It's so salty." Adana's eyes widened. I made it exactly how he likes it." "Well, he doesn't like it," Minhee snapped. She pushed the bowl away. "It tastes like garbage. Is this what you feed him? No wonder he looks so tired lately." Ji-hyun tasted it. He chewed slowly, his face blank. Then he spat the meat into a napkin. "She's right," he said, tossing the napkin onto the table. "It's inedible." "But," Adana started, her chest heaving. "It's the same recipe." "It's your mother's recipe." "Don't talk about my mother," Ji-hyun warned, his voice low. "Get this trash off the table. Order us something from that Italian place downtown." "Order it?" Adana asked. "But that will take an hour, and it's raining." "Then you better hurry up and call," Minhee said, smirking. "And bring us some wine while we wait. The good stuff." Adana looked at the food she had spent all day making. The food she had cooked with so much love, thinking tonight would be special. Thinking they would celebrate. She walked to the table and began to clear the plates. Her hands were numb. She felt like she was floating outside of her body, watching this tragedy happen to someone else. "Faster," Ji-hyun said, not looking up from his phone. Adana stacked the bowls. A piece of meat fell onto the white tablecloth, leaving a dark red stain. "Look what you did," Minhee shrieked. "You clumsy idiot, that's Italian silk." "I'm sorry," Adana mumbled, trying to dab at the stain. "Stop," Ji-hyun said. "Just stop. You ruin everything you touch. Go to your room, we'll get the food ourselves." "But the wine?" Adana asked, confused. "I said get out." Ji-hyun roared, slamming his hand on the table. The sound echoed through the penthouse. Adana flinched, wrapping her arms around her stomach instinctively. She backed away, her eyes wide with terror. She had never seen him this angry, not at her. She turned and ran. She ran down the hallway, past the master bedroom where the other woman's bags were waiting, and into the small guest room at the end of the hall. It was dusty. It was used for storage. Boxes of old files and winter clothes were stacked everywhere. She closed the door and locked it. Her legs gave out, and she slid down to the floor. The room was dark, lit only by the city lights outside. Adana curled into a ball on the cold hardwood floor. She pressed her face into her knees so they wouldn't hear her sobbing. She cried for the marriage that was dead. She cried for the man she had lost. But mostly, she cried for the baby growing inside her. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her belly, her hands clutching the fabric of her sweater. "I'm so sorry, little one. I thought he would love us." She stayed there for hours. She heard the delivery man arrive. She heard them laughing in the living room. She heard the clink of wine glasses. She heard the door to the master bedroom close. Silence fell over the apartment, a heavy, suffocating silence. Adana sat up. Her eyes were swollen, her throat raw, but her mind was clear. Strange how pain could clarify things. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She opened her banking app. Zero balance. He had cut her off last week, saying she was spending too much on groceries. She had $50 in cash hidden in her winter coat. That was it. She looked around the small, cramped room. This was her life now, a prisoner in her own home, a servant to her husband and his mistress. "No," she whispered. The word felt strange on her tongue. "No." She stood up. Her legs were shaky, but she forced them to hold her weight. She walked to the small window and looked out at the rain-soaked city. New York City, a place where people disappeared every day. She couldn't stay here. If she stayed, the stress would kill the baby. Or Ji-hyun would force her to get rid of it. Or Minhee would make her life a living hell until she had nothing left. She had to leave, but she couldn't just walk out. She had no money, nowhere to go. She needed a plan. She remembered the safe in the study. Ji-hyun kept cash there, emergency cash, and his spare passport. And the files on the gray business deals he thought she didn't know about. She wiped her face. A cold resolve settled in her chest, replacing the heartbreak. Adana opened the door quietly. The hallway was dark. She could hear soft music coming from the master bedroom. She tiptoed past it, holding her breath. She reached the study. The door was unlocked. She slipped inside and closed it softly behind her. The room smelled like old paper and leather. She went to the bookshelf and pulled out the copy of The Art of War. Behind it was the keypad. She prayed he hadn't changed the code. It used to be her birthday. She punched in the numbers. 0812. Beep. Click, the safe popped open. Adana let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Inside, there were stacks of $100 bills, thick stacks. There was a black ledger and a flash drive. She grabbed the cash, all of it. She didn't count it, but it had to be at least $20,000. She shoved it into her pockets, down her bra, into her socks. Then she looked at the ledger. She knew what this was. She had seen him looking at it late at night, sweating. This was the leverage. This was the insurance. He took the ledger and the flash drive. She was about to close the safe when she heard a floorboard creak in the hallway. Adana froze, her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Who's there?" Ji-hyun's voice, sleepy but irritated. She heard his footsteps coming closer. He was coming to the study. Adana looked around wildly. There was nowhere to hide. If he found her here with the cash and the ledger, he would kill her, or lock her up forever. She saw the window. It led to the fire escape. She scrambled toward it, unlocking the latch with shaking fingers. She pushed the window up just as the doorknob to the study began to turn. The rain blasted into the room, cold and wet. Adana climbed out onto the metal grate, the wind whipping her hair into her face. She pulled the window down, leaving it just a crack open so it wouldn't latch. She pressed herself against the brick wall of the building, hidden in the shadows of the fire escape. The study door opened. The light flicked on. Adana held her breath, the rain soaking her to the bone. She peeked through the slit in the curtains. Ji-hyun walked in. He was wearing his silk robe. He looked around the room, frowning. He walked to the safe. He saw it was open. "Damn it!" he shouted. He grabbed the phone from the desk. "Security, lock down the building. No one leaves." Adana's blood ran cold. Lockdown. She had minutes before the guards blocked the exits. She looked down. 12 stories. The metal stairs were slippery with rain. She put a hand on her belly. "Hold on," she whispered. "We have to run." She started down the stairs, 1 step, 2 steps. The metal clanged softly under her feet. She had to be faster. She reached the 10th floor. The 9th. Above her, she heard the window slam open. "She's on the fire escape." Ji-hyun's voice roared over the wind. "Get her." Adana didn't look back. She ran. She slipped on the wet metal, her shin banging hard against the step. Pain exploded up her leg, but she bit down on her lip and kept moving. 8th floor. 7th. She could hear heavy footsteps on the metal stairs above her. The guards, they were coming. "Hey, stop right there," a man shouted. Adanna scrambled down the next flight. Her hands were freezing, slipping on the railing. 6th floor. She saw an open window on the 5th floor. A party, loud music, people laughing. It was her only chance. She climbed over the railing and swung herself toward the open window. It was a crazy jump. If she missed, she would fall to the alley below. "Don't do it, Adanna," Ji-hyun yelled from above. He sounded closer now. "You'll kill yourself." Adanna looked up. She saw his face peering over the railing, wet with rain, eyes wide with. Was that fear, or just anger that his property was escaping? "I'd rather die than be yours," she screamed back. She let go. Adanna hit the floor hard. She didn't land gracefully like they did in the movies. She slammed into a low coffee table, her hip taking the brunt of the impact before she rolled onto a thick shag rug. Drinks spilled. Glass shattered. A girl in a sequin dress screamed, dropping her red solo cup. The music, some heavy bass rap song, was so loud it vibrated in Adanna's teeth, masking the sound of her bone-hitting wood. For a second, the room spun. Black spots danced in her vision. The pain in her hip was sharp, hot, and immediate. She gasped, curling into a ball, her hands flying to her stomach. The baby. "What the fuck?" a guy with a backwards cap yelled, stumbling back. "Did she just fly in the window?" Adanna forced her eyes open. The room was hazy with smoke, weed, cheap beer, sweat. A dozen faces stared down at her, a mix of shock and drunken amusement. She scrambled to her knees. Her legs screamed in protest, but the fear of Ji-hyun was louder. He was just 2 floors up. He had guards. They would be at the door in seconds. "I'm sorry," she wheezed, grabbing the edge of the sofa to pull herself up. She looked like a madwoman, wet hair plastered to her face, oversized sweater soaked with rain, one sock missing. "Please, don't tell anyone I'm here." "Yo, are you okay?" A girl with glitter on her cheek stepped forward, reaching out a hand. "You're bleeding." Adanna looked down. Her shin was scraped raw, blood oozing through the fabric of her leggings, but she didn't have time for this. "I'm fine," Adanna lied. She pushed past the girl, limping toward the apartment door. Please lock the window." She threw the door open and stumbled into the hallway. It was empty. The walls were painted a sterile white, the carpet a dull gray. It looked exactly like her floor, just 2 levels down. She heard the elevator ding. Panic surged through her veins like ice water. She threw herself behind a large potted plant near the stairwell door just as the elevator doors slid open. 2 men in black suits stepped out. They were big, necks thick like tree trunks. She recognized one of them, Kim, Ji-hyun's head of security. He had a scar running through his eyebrow and dead eyes. "Check 5B, Kim barked into his wrist mic. "Boss said she jumped. If she's not splattered on the pavement, she's in one of these units." Adanna pressed her hand over her mouth. She was shaking so hard the leaves of the plant rustled. The men turned left, toward the party apartment she had just left. Adanna moved. She didn't wait. She slipped through the stairwell door, moving as fast as her injured leg would allow. She didn't go down. They would expect her to go down, to run for the lobby. She went up. It was crazy. It was stupid. But she knew the building. The 6th floor was under renovation. Ji-hyun had complained about the noise for weeks. It was empty. She dragged herself up 1 flight of stairs, biting her lip to keep from crying out. The stairwell was cold, smelling of concrete and dust. She reached the 6th floor landing and cracked the door open. Darkness. Dust sheets covered the floors. The air smelled of paint thinner and sawdust. She slipped inside and closed the door softly. She leaned back against it, sliding down until she hit the floor. Her chest heaved. Her heart beat so hard it hurt. She waited. Minutes ticked by. She heard heavy boots clanging on the metal stairs, voices shouting. "Clear on 5, no sign of her." "Check the lobby, seal the exits." "What about the alley?" "Nothing." "Just some trash cans knocked over." The voices faded down the stairwell. Adanna let out a shuddering breath. They thought she had made it to the ground. They were looking for her outside. She stayed there for an hour. She sat in the dark, shivering in her wet clothes, her hands protective over her belly. "You're okay," she whispered to the darkness. "We're okay." She needed to move. She couldn't stay here forever. Eventually, they would search the whole building. She needed to get out, but not through the lobby. She remembered the service elevator. It was in the back, used by contractors and movers. It opened into the delivery bay in the alley, not the main street. She stood up. Her leg was stiff, throbbing with a dull, heavy ache. She limped through the dark apartment, navigating around stacks of drywall and buckets of paint. She found the service elevator. She pressed the button. It lit up. "Please," she prayed, "please let it be empty." The doors groaned open. Empty. It smelled like garbage and old food. To Adana, it smelled like freedom. She rode it down to the basement level. The doors opened to a loading dock. Rain poured down in sheets outside the open bay door. A large dumpster truck was backing out, its reverse beeper echoing loudly. Beep, beep, beep. Adana pulled her coat tighter around herself. She waited for the truck to block the view of the security booth at the end of the alley. As soon as the massive metal body of the truck shielded her, she ran. She splashed through puddles, the cold water soaking her socks. She didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, until the fancy high-rises of the Upper East Side gave way to the darker, grittier streets of Harlem. She didn't stop until she saw a yellow cab idling on a corner, the driver smoking a cigarette out the window. She ripped the back door open and dove inside. "Drive!" she gasped, slamming the door. The driver, an older man with a gray beard and tired eyes, looked at her in the rearview mirror. He took a long drag of his cigarette. "Where to, lady?" "Drive," Adana snapped. "Please, just go," he shrugged. "It's your money." He threw the meter on and pulled away from the curb. Adana sank low in the seat. She watched the city blur past the rain-streaked window. The lights, the people, the noise, it all felt like a nightmare. She reached into her pocket and touched the thick roll of cash. It was real. She had done it. "Where we going?" the driver asked again after 10 minutes. "I can't just drive in circles." Adana thought, where could she go? Not to a friend. Ji-hyun knew them all. Not to a hotel. They asked for ID. "Take me to Queens," she said. "Somewhere. Cheap, a motel, you know a place." The driver eyed her in the mirror again. He saw the wet clothes, the fear, the desperation. He didn't ask questions. In this city, you didn't ask questions if you wanted to stay out of trouble. "Yeah," he grunted. "I know a spot near the airport. It's a dump, but they don't ask for names." "Perfect," Adana whispered. The ride took 40 minutes. Adana spent every second of it checking the rear window, terrified she would see Ji-hyun's black SUV tearing down the highway after them. But there was nothing, just rain and traffic. The motel was called the Sleepy Inn. The S on the neon sign was burnt out, so it read the Leapy Inn. It was a 2-story building with peeling paint and rust stains running down the stucco walls. The driver pulled up to the curb. $30. Adana pulled a damp $100 bill from her pocket and handed it to him. "Keep the change." The driver's eyebrows shot up. He took the bill, checked it against the light, and nodded. "Good luck, kid." Adana stepped out into the rain. The air here smelled different, like jet fuel and exhaust. She walked into the lobby. It was small, with a flickering fluorescent light that buzzed like an angry fly. Behind the bulletproof glass, a man with greasy hair was watching a game show on a tiny TV. "Room," Adana said, her voice hoarse. The man didn't look away from the TV. "Hourly or nightly?" "Nightly, for a week." He finally looked at her. He took in her appearance, the expensive coat that was now ruined, the lack of luggage. "Cash up front, no refunds, no guests after 10. "Fine, 400. It was robbery for a place like this, but Adana didn't care. She counted out $400 bills and slid them under the glass. He slid a key across the counter. "Room 109, around the back." Adana took the key. It had a heavy green plastic tag. She walked outside, keeping her head down. Room 109 was on the ground floor, facing a brick wall. She fumbled with the lock, her hands shaking uncontrollably now that the adrenaline was fading. The door creaked open. The room was small. A queen-sized bed with a questionable floral comforter took up most of the space. There was a small table with one chair, a TV from the 90s, and a bathroom that smelled like bleach and mold. Adana locked the door. She engaged the deadbolt. Then she dragged the chair and wedged it under the door handle. Only then did she let herself breathe. She stripped off her wet clothes, leaving them in a pile on the brown carpet. She walked into the bathroom and turned on the shower. The water took forever to get warm and the pressure was weak, but when she stepped under the spray, she sobbed. She washed the city off her skin. She washed the smell of Ji-hyun's cologne off her neck. She scrubbed until her skin was red and raw. She stepped out and wrapped herself in the scratchy white towel. She sat on the edge of the bed. Her reflection in the mirror opposite the bed scared her. Her eyes were hollow, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. Her hair was a tangled mess. She looked at her stomach. It was still small, barely a bump. "I kept you safe," she whispered, her hand resting on her skin. "I promised I would." She reached for her coat and pulled out the items from the safe. The cash, the flash drive, the black ledger. She dumped the money on the bed. It was a lot, bundles of hundreds. She counted it quickly, $25,000. It was enough to start over, enough to get far away. But the ledger. She opened the black book. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. It was written in Korean, Ji-hyun's sharp, angular handwriting. But there were names she recognized. English names. Japanese politicians. Next to the names were numbers, big numbers, and dates. Senator Miller, $50,000 Sep 12. Port Authority inspection, $100,000 Oct 4. Adana felt sick. She knew Ji-hyun was ruthless in business, but this was bribery. This was corruption. She turned the page. Project S disposal, $10,000. Her blood ran cold. Disposal. She flipped further. The dates went back years. She saw a name that made her heart stop. Adana's father, loan repayment default. She stared at the entry. Her father. Her father had died in a car accident in Georgia 3 years ago, right before she met Ji-hyun. Ji-hyun had been the one to comfort her. He had paid for the funeral. He had told her he would take care of everything. She looked at the date. The entry was dated 2 days before the accident. Default. And next to it, a note in the margins, lesson applied. The room spun. The air seemed to be sucked out of the space. No, Adana gasped. She dropped the book like it was burning her skin. Lesson applied. He had killed him or had him killed. Because of money, because of a debt she didn't even know about, she thought back to how they met. Ji-hyun had just appeared. He was a client at the catering company where she worked. He had been so charming, so persistent. He had swept her off her feet right when she was at her lowest, grieving her father. It wasn't a coincidence. He had orchestrated it, all of it. He had killed her father, then swooped in to save the grieving daughter. He had owned her from the very beginning. Adana scrambled back on the bed, pushing herself into the corner against the headboard. A scream built in her throat, a raw, primal sound of betrayal and horror. She clamped her hand over her mouth to stifle it. She couldn't scream. Not here. She rocked back and forth, tears streaming down her face. She had slept in the bed of her father's murderer for 3 years. She was carrying his child. The monster she thought was just a cold husband was something far worse. He was a devil, and she had just stolen his darkest secrets. He wouldn't just be looking for her to bring her back now. He would be looking for her to silence her. Permanently. She looked at the flash drive. If the ledger had the payments, what was on the drive? She didn't have a computer. She couldn't check. She needed help. Real help. Not the police. Ji-hyun owned people like Senator Miller. If she went to the cops, she'd be dead in an hour. She needed someone outside the system. She remembered a name. A whisper she had heard at one of Ji-hyun's dinner parties. A man even the powerful men in suits were afraid of. They didn't speak his name loudly. They called him the Ghost. She had heard he operated out of a bar in the Bronx, a place called the Iron Horse. It was a long shot, a suicide mission maybe. But what choice did she have? Adana wiped her face. Her eyes were hard now. The sadness was gone, burned away by a white-hot rage. He had taken her father. He had taken her freedom. He had tried to take her dignity. "You messed with the wrong woman, Ji-hyun," she hissed into the empty room. She grabbed the ledger and the money. She found the driest clothes she had. Her leggings were still damp, but the sweater was okay. She put them back on. She couldn't stay here. The taxi driver knew where she was. If Ji-hyun tracked the cab, she had to keep moving. Adana unlocked the door and stepped back out into the rain. The night was pitch black, the only light coming from the distant headlights on the highway. She started walking, one foot in front of the other. She wasn't Adana the wife anymore. She wasn't Adana the victim. She was a mother, and she was going to burn Ji-hyun's world to the ground. The rain had turned into a cold, steady drizzle by the time Adana reached the subway station. She had walked for 20 minutes, her injured leg dragging, sending sharp bolts of fire up her hip with every step. She had ditched the coat in a dumpster 3 blocks back. It was too recognizable. Now she wore a gray hoodie she had bought off a homeless man for $50. It smelled like smoke and old sweat, but it was big enough to hide her face and her small baby bump. She stood on the platform, waiting for the 2 train. It was 3:00 a.m. The station was empty except for a rat scurrying along the tracks and a man sleeping on a bench, wrapped in newspapers. Adana leaned against a tiled pillar. She felt lightheaded. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Her hand went to her pocket, clutching the flash drive. It felt warm against her cold fingers. It was the only weapon she had. The train rattled into the station, screeching to a halt. The doors slid open. Adana limped inside and sat in the corner seat. She pulled her hood down low. She closed her eyes, but she couldn't sleep. Every time she drifted off, she saw Ji-hyun's face. She saw the way he looked at her when he told her to carry the mistress's bags. She saw the entry in the ledger. Lesson applied. He had killed her dad. He had watched her cry at the funeral, held her hand, and probably laughed inside. Rage burned in her chest, keeping her warm. The train rumbled north, crossing from Queens into Manhattan, then up into the Bronx. The crowd changed. Tired nurses coming off shift. Construction workers. Kids who looked too young to be out this late. Adana got off at a stop in the South Bronx. The streets here were darker. The streetlights were broken. Trash piled up on the curbs. She knew the address. She had seen it on a matchbook in Ji-hyun's jacket pocket once. He had warned her never to go near the place. He said it was where the animals lived. The Iron Horse. It was a dive bar on a corner with blacked-out windows and a heavy steel door. A neon sign buzzed above the door, flickering red. A massive man sat on a stool outside, arms crossed over his chest. He was bald, with tattoos covering his neck and hands. Adana took a deep breath. This was it. She walked up to the bouncer. He watched her approach, his eyes narrowing. He saw a girl in a dirty hoodie, limping, looking like she had just crawled out of a fight. "Lost," he rumbled. His voice was deep like gravel. "No," Adana said. She tried to make her voice strong, but it shook. "I need to see the ghost." The bouncer laughed. It was a short, mean sound. "Ghost ain't seeing visitors, especially not strays. Get lost, girl. Go find a shelter." "Tell him," Adana paused. She needed something that would make him listen. "Tell him I have Lee Ji-hyun's ledger." The bouncer's smile vanished. He stared at her for a long moment, assessing her. He looked at her hands, her eyes. He saw the desperation, and he saw the truth. "Wait here," he grunted. He opened the heavy steel door and slipped inside. Adana stood in the cold, hugging herself. Her teeth chattered. 5 minutes passed, then 10. She was about to turn and run, thinking he had called the cops, when the door opened again. The bouncer jerked his head. "In!" Adana stepped inside. The bar was warm. It smelled of stale beer, sawdust, and something metallic like blood. It was dark, lit only by low-hanging lamps over the pool tables. The music was low, old-school hip-hop. There were men sitting at the tables, dangerous men. They stopped talking as she walked by. They watched her. Adana kept her eyes on the floor. The bouncer led her to the back, past the bar, to a door marked private. He knocked once, then opened it. The office was small. There was a desk piled with papers and cash. Behind the desk sat a man. He wasn't what Adana expected. He wasn't old. He looked maybe 30. He had dark skin, buzz-cut hair, and a scar running from his lip to his chin. He was wearing a simple black t-shirt that showed off arms thick with muscle. He was cleaning a gun. He didn't look up when she entered. He just kept wiping the barrel with a rag. "You're the girl with the magic book," he said. His voice was smooth, quiet. "Are you the ghost?" Adana asked. He looked up then. His eyes were light brown, almost yellow, wolf eyes. "Some people call me that. My friends call me Dante. You ain't a friend." He put the gun down on the desk. "Let me see it." Adana reached into her pocket. She pulled out the black ledger. She didn't hand it over. She held it tight against her chest. "I need help," she said. Dante leaned back in his chair. He looked amused. "Everyone needs help, sweetheart. Why should I help you?" "Because Lee Ji-hyun wants me dead," Adana said. "And because this book proves he's a criminal, it proves he's bribing senators, it proves he's laundering money." Dante raised an eyebrow. "Ji-hyun, the pretty boy CEO, I know him. Thinks he owns this city." "He killed my father," Adana whispered. The words felt heavy in the room. Dante's amusement faded. He sat up straighter. "Let me see the book." "You have to promise," Adana said, stepping closer. "You have to promise to keep me safe, me and my baby." Dante's eyes dropped to her stomach, then back to her face. He saw the bruise on her shin through the torn leggings. He saw the terror in her eyes. "I don't make promises I can't keep," Dante said. "But if that book is real, I might be interested. Ji-hyun owes me. He crossed a line a few years back, cost me a lot of money." Adana hesitated. Then she placed the ledger on the desk. Dante opened it. He flipped through the pages. He whistled low. "Well, well," he muttered. "Senator Miller, the Port Authority. This guy has his hands in everyone's pockets." He stopped at a page. He tapped it with his finger. "And here's the payment for the devastating fire at the warehouse in Brooklyn. I knew it was him." He looked up at Adana. There was a new respect in his eyes. "How did you get this?" "I stole it from his safe," Adana said. "Tonight." Dante laughed, a real laugh this time. "You got balls, girl, I'll give you that." He closed the book and put his hand on it. "Okay, you got a deal. You stay here. I got rooms upstairs. Safe rooms. No one gets in without getting through me." "Thank you," Adana breathed. Her legs finally gave out. She grabbed the edge of the desk to stop herself from falling. Dante was out of his chair in a second. He caught her by the arm. His grip was strong but gentle. "Easy," he said. "You're running on fumes," he called out to the bouncer. "Tiny, get her some water and tell Maria to fix up room 4. We got a guest." Adana slept for 12 hours. She woke up in a small room with peeling wallpaper and a single window with bars on it, but the bed was soft and the door had a heavy deadbolt. She sat up, panicking for a second until she remembered where she was. The Iron Horse. Dante. There was a knock on the door. "It's open," she croaked. A woman walked in. She was older, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and a kind face. She carried a tray with soup and bread. "Eat," the woman said. "Dante said you need strength." Adana ate like a starving animal. The soup was hot and salty. It tasted like heaven. "Where is he?" Adana asked when she was done. "Downstairs," the woman said. "He's making calls. You caused a stir, honey. The whole city is looking for you." "They say a crazy maid attacked the CEO and ran off with his jewelry." "That's a lie," Adana said angrily. "I'm his wife." The woman shrugged. "Doesn't matter what's true, matters what they pay the news to say." Adana got up. Her leg was stiff, but the rest felt better. She needed to talk to Dante. She went downstairs. The bar was closed, it being daytime, but Dante was at a table in the corner with 3 other men. They were looking at a laptop. When Adana walked in, the men went quiet. Dante waved her over. "Look at this," Dante said, pointing at the screen. It was a news report. A photo of Adana, an old one from before she was married, was on the screen. The headline read, "Mentally unstable housekeeper wanted for assault and theft." "He's erasing you," Dante said. "He's painting you as a criminal, so if the cops find you, they won't listen to a word you say. They'll just hand you over to him." "He can't do that," Adana said, her hands balling into fists. "He is doing it," Dante said. "He has the money. Money buys the truth." "So what do we do?" Adana asked. "We have the ledger." "The ledger is good," Dante said, "but it's paper. He can claim it's fake. He can claim you forged it. We need more." Adana remembered the flash drive. "I have this." She pulled the small silver drive from her pocket. Dante's eyes lit up. "Now we're talking." He took the drive and plugged it into the laptop. He clicked on a folder. Hundreds of files appeared. Videos. Audio recordings. Dante clicked on a video file. It opened. The screen showed a dark room. Ji-hyun was sitting in a chair. A man was kneeling before him, tied up. "Please," the man on the screen begged. "I'll pay you back." "It's not about the money," Ji-hyun said calmly. He stood up and picked up a golf club. "It's about respect." The video cut out as Ji-hyun swung the club. The bar was silent. The men around the table looked sick. Even Dante looked grim. "That's him," Adana whispered. "That's my husband." Dante pulled the drive out. "This isn't just leverage," he said quietly. "This is a death sentence for him. If this gets out, he's done. Life in prison." "Then release it," Adana said. "Put it on the internet." Dante shook his head. "Not yet. If we just dump it, he might have friends who can scrub it, or he might run. He has a private jet. If he smells danger, he'll be in a non-extradition country by breakfast." "So what do? "We trap him," Dante said. A dark smile spread across his face. "We make him come to us. We make him confess." "How?" "You," Dante said. He looked at Adana. "He wants you back. He wants that drive back. We're going to offer a trade." "No," Adana stepped back. "I can't see him. He'll kill me." "He won't," Dante said. "Because I'll be there and my boys will be there. We're going to set a meeting, a public place. We wire you up. We get him to admit what he did to your father. We get it on audio. Then we take him down." Adana felt cold. She looked at the screen, at the face of the monster she had married. She thought about her baby. If Ji-hyun wasn't stopped, he would never stop hunting them. "Okay," she said. Her voice was steady. "I'll do it." Scene shift. The penthouse. Ji-hyun threw the glass of whiskey against the wall. It shattered, amber liquid dripping down the expensive wallpaper. "Find her," he screamed. Kim, his head of security, stood by the door, head bowed. "We're trying, sir." She vanished. Cab dropped her in Queens, but she wasn't at the motel. The clerk said she left on foot. "She has the ledger," Ji-hyun said, pacing the room. He ran a hand through his hair. He looked unhinged. His perfect suit was rumpled. "Do you know what happens if that gets out? Everything ends, everything." Minhee was sitting on the sofa, filing her nails. She looked bored. "Just kill her when you find her, Opa. Make it look like an accident." Ji-hyun spun on her. "Shut up. You think this is a game." "That book has names in it. Names of men who will kill me if they find out I kept records." His phone buzzed on the table. He froze. He walked over and picked it up. It was a blocked number. "Hello," he answered. "Hello, husband." Ji-hyun's hand tightened on the phone. "Adana." "I have your things," Adana said. Her voice sounded different, stronger. "The book, the drive." "Where are you?" Ji-hyun demanded. "Adana, listen to me. You're sick. You're confused. Come home. We can talk about this." "Stop lying," she said. "I know about my father. I know everything." Silence hung on the line, heavy and thick. "What do you want?" Ji-hyun asked finally. His voice was cold now, no more pretending. "I want $10 million, Adana said. "Cash and a plane ticket to disappear. In exchange, you get your drive back." $10 million, Ji-hyun laughed. "You're dreaming." "Then I send the video of the golf club to the police," Adana said. "And the ledger goes to the New York Times." Hyun grit his teeth. "Fine, when, where?" Tomorrow, midnight, the old shipyard in Brooklyn, Dock 4. Adana, that's dangerous. Come alone, she said. If I see anyone else, the email sends automatically. Click, she hung up. Ji-hyun lowered the phone. His eyes were black pits of rage. She wants to meet, he said to Kim. Tomorrow, Brooklyn shipyard. Alone, Kim asked. She thinks so, Ji-hyun sneered. Get the team ready. I want snipers on the cranes. I want a boat in the water. She doesn't leave that dock alive. Minhee looked up. What about the money? I'll bring it, Ji-hyun said. She can look at it while she bleeds out. Scene shift. The iron horse Adana put the burner phone down on the table. Her hands were shaking. You did good, Dante said. He handed her a bottle of water. He agreed too easily, Adana said. He's going to bring people. I know, Dante said. He was checking the magazine of a rifle. That's why we're bringing people too. He looked at Adana. Listen to me. Tomorrow night is going to be loud. It's going to be messy. But it's the only way to end this. You have to be brave. Can you do that? Adana touched her stomach. She thought about the life growing inside her. A life that deserved a mother who wasn't afraid. I can do it, she said. Dante nodded. Good, now let's go over the plan again. You're the bait, but you're bait with teeth. He pulled out a map of the shipyard. We get there early. We secure the perimeter. My guys will be in the shadows. When he shows up, you keep him talking. Get him to say it. Get him to say he killed your dad. Once we have that recording, we light him up. Adana looked at the map. It looked like a battlefield. Dante, yeah. Why are you helping me, really? Dante stopped. He looked at the ceiling for a second. I had a sister, he said quietly. She got mixed up with a guy like Ji-hyun. Rich, powerful, thought he could do whatever he wanted. She died. Cops called it a suicide. I knew better. He looked back at Adana. I couldn't save her. Maybe I can save you. Adana reached out and squeezed his hand. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Dante said, standing up. Thank me when he's in cuffs or in a box. The next night, Brooklyn shipyard. The shipyard was a graveyard of rusted metal and rotting wood. The wind howled off the water, smelling of salt and decay. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds. Adana stood under a lone street lamp at the end of Dock 4. She was wearing a Kevlar vest under her oversized jacket. A small microphone was taped to her chest. She held a black duffel bag. It was empty, but Ji-hyun would think it held the ledger. It was 11:55 p.m. She heard the sound of a car engine. A black SUV rolled slowly onto the dock. It stopped 50 feet away. The headlights cut through the darkness, blinding her. The door opened. Ji-hyun stepped out. He was wearing a long black coat. He looked like a prince of darkness. He held a silver briefcase. Adana, he called out. His voice carried over the wind. You look terrible. Cut the crap, Ji-hyun, Adana shouted back. Show me the money. Ji-hyun walked closer. He stopped 10 feet away. He dropped the briefcase on the ground. It's all there, he said. 10 million, now give me the drive. Not yet, Adana said. I want to hear you say it. Say what? Ji-hyun sighed, looking bored. My father, Adana said. Did you kill him? Ji-hyun laughed. He took a step closer. Adana, does it matter? He was a drunk, a gambler. He was dragging you down. I did you a favor. So you admit it, Adana pressed. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Admit it, Ji-hyun sneered. I'm proud of it. I had his brake lines cut, simple, clean, and look what it got me, a devoted wife, for a while anyway. You monster, Adana whispered. I'm a businessman, Ji-hyun said. Now give me the bag or I'll come take it. You're not taking anything, a voice boomed from the darkness. Floodlights snapped on from the tops of the shipping containers, bathing the dock in blinding white light. Ji-hyun shielded his eyes, stumbling back. Dante stepped out from behind a stack of crates. He was holding an assault rifle. Police are on their way, Ji-hyun. We got that confession live-streamed to the FBI. Ji-hyun's face twisted in shock, then rage. He looked around. Kim, now! Gunfire erupted. Bullets pinged off the metal containers. Adana screamed and dropped to the ground, crawling behind a concrete barrier. Men in black rappelled down from the cranes, Ji-hyun's men, but Dante's crew was ready. They returned fire from the shadows. It was chaos. The sound of gunshots was deafening. Adana covered her head, curling into a ball. She saw Ji-hyun running back toward his SUV. He was escaping. No, she screamed. She saw Dante pinned down by two shooters. He couldn't get to Ji-hyun. Adana looked at the SUV. Ji-hyun was fumbling with his keys. She didn't think, she just moved. She grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the ground and ran. She ran through the gunfire, ignoring the bullets whizzing past her. Ji-hyun had just opened the door. He turned when he heard her footsteps. He reached into his coat and pulled out a gun. He aimed it at her. Die, he screamed. Adana swung the pipe. She hit his hand. The gun flew skittering across the dock. Ji-hyun roared in pain, clutching his wrist. He looked at her with pure hate. "You bitch!" He lunged at her. He was stronger, heavier. He tackled her to the ground. The pipe clattered away. His hands were around her throat. He squeezed. "I should have killed you first," he spat, his face inches from hers. "I should have." Adana couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in her eyes. She clawed at his face, his eyes. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, close, loud. Ji-hyun's grip loosened. His eyes went wide. He looked down at his chest. A red flower was blooming on his white shirt. He slumped forward, collapsing onto Adana. Adana pushed him off, gasping for air. She scrambled back, crab-walking away from his body. Dante stood there, his rifle smoking. He walked over and kicked Ji-hyun's gun into the water. He looked down at Ji-hyun. The CEO was gasping, blood bubbling from his lips. "Lesson applied," Dante said coldly. Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights flashed against the shipyard walls. The police were here. Dante reached down and pulled Adana to her feet. "You okay?" Adana looked at the body of her husband. She looked at the man who had tormented her, used her, and killed her father. He was just a man now, a dying man. "I'm okay," she said, and for the first time in 3 years she meant it. The police cars screeched onto the dock. Officers swarmed out, guns drawn. "Hands up!" Dante raised his hands. He looked at Adana and winked. "Don't worry, I got good lawyers." Adana raised her hands too. She felt the cool night air on her face. She felt the baby kick, a small, fluttery movement. She was going to be arrested. She was going to face questions, but she was alive, and she was free. Epilogue: 6 months later, the sun was shining in Georgia. It was a warm, humid heat that smelled of peaches and pine needles. Adana sat on the porch of the small house she had bought. It wasn't a penthouse. It didn't have marble floors or floor-to-ceiling windows, but it was hers. She rocked the stroller back and forth with her foot. Inside, baby Marcus was sleeping. He had his father's eyes, but Adana's smile. She picked up the newspaper from the table. "Disgraced CEO dies in prison hospital," the headline read. Ji-hyun had survived the gunshot, only to spend his last few months in a cell, watching his empire crumble. Minhee had testified against him to save her own skin. She was in jail now too for conspiracy. Adana folded the paper and put it down. She didn't feel happy, she just felt peace. A car pulled up the gravel driveway, a black muscle car. Adana smiled. Dante stepped out. He was wearing a suit which looked strange on him, but he looked good. He walked up the steps, holding a bouquet of flowers. "Hey, Trouble," he said. "Hey, Ghost," she replied. "How's the little man?" "Sleeping, finally." Dante sat on the railing. "I brought you something." He handed her a thick envelope. "What's this?" "The royalties," Dante said. "From the book deal." "And the movie rights. People love a survivor story." Adana laughed. "I don't need the money, Dante. I have enough." "Take it," Dante said. "Put it in a college fund for Marcus. Make sure he never has to rely on anyone." Adana took the envelope. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a while, watching the wind move through the trees. "So," Dante said, looking at her, "you happy here, quiet life?" "It's good," Adana said. "It's safe." "Safe is boring," Dante teased. "I like boring," Adana said. She looked at him. "But maybe I could use a visit now and then to keep things interesting." Dante smiled. It was a soft smile, one that didn't reach his scar. "I think I can manage that." Adana reached out and took his hand. His skin was rough, calloused. Her hand was scarred too from the night on the dock, 2 survivors. "Stay for dinner?" she asked. "I'm making gal by J. Jim, my own recipe this time." "I'd love that," Dante said. Adana stood up and picked up the baby. She looked at the horizon where the sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and purple. She wasn't the invisible wife anymore. She wasn't the victim. She was Adana, and she was just getting started. The smell of braised short ribs filled the small kitchen, mixing with the scent of the Georgia pines coming through the open window. Adana moved around the stove, checking the rice, stirring the sauce. It felt normal. It felt domestic. But her eyes kept darting to the gun Dante had placed on top of the refrigerator. He had tried to hide it, tucking it behind the cereal boxes, but she saw it. He never went anywhere unarmed. Dante was sitting at the small wooden table, holding baby Marcus. The sight was almost comical. Dante was a mountain of a man, all hard muscle and tattoos, wearing a suit that cost more than her car. Marcus was a tiny, wiggling bundle in a yellow onesie. Dante's large finger was caught in Marcus's grip. The baby was staring up at him with wide, curious eyes. "He's got a strong grip," Dante said, his voice low and rumbly. "He's gonna be a fighter." "He's going to be a pianist," Adana corrected, setting a bowl of kimchi on the table. "Or a doctor, no fighting," Dante chuckled. "If he looks like you, he'll be breaking hearts, not jaws." Adana served the food. She sat down opposite him. For a moment, they just ate. The silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. Adana watched him eat. He ate quickly, efficiently, like a man who was used to eating on the run. "It's good," he said. "Better than the takeout place near the club." "That's not a high bar," Adana smiled. She took a sip of water. "Dante, you didn't drive 6 hours from New York just to eat my cooking and give me a check. What's wrong?" Dante stopped chewing. He put his chopsticks down. The playful light in his eyes vanished, replaced by the yellow wolf gaze she remembered from the bar. "You're too smart for your own good, Adana," he said. "I learned the hard way," she replied. "Tell me." Dante leaned forward. "The ledger, the one you stole. What about it? Ji-hyun is dead. Minhee is in jail. It's over." "Ji-hyun was just the middleman," Dante said. "He was holding money for people a lot scarier than him, politicians, cartel bosses. When we leaked that info, we made a lot of people very angry." Adana felt a cold chill run down her spine. She put her fork down. "You said I was safe. You said they would be too busy fighting the feds to look for me." "I was wrong," Dante said. He didn't sugarcoat it. That was one thing she liked about him. He never lied. "Senator Miller, the guy on page 4, he beat the charges, technicality, and now he's cleaning up loose ends." Adana looked at Marcus, who was happily chewing on his fist. "Does he know I'm here?" "He knows you're not in New York," Dante said. "My guys picked up a tail near the state line." "Professional hit squad, ex-military." Adana stood up. The peace she had felt for the last 6 months shattered like glass. "They're coming here." "They're close," Dante said. He stood up too, moving to the fridge. He grabbed his gun and tucked it into his waistband. "That's why I'm here. We need to move now." "My house," Adana whispered, looking around the living room she had just finished painting. "I just got settled." "A house is just wood and brick," Dante said, walking over to her. He put his hands on her shoulders. "You can buy another house. You can't buy another life." Pause, listen to me. This is the reality of the world Adana lives in now. She took down a giant, but the giants have friends. She thought she could hide in the suburbs, but the past has a way of catching up. Where are you watching from? Are you safe in your bed? Are you on the bus? Imagine if you had to pack your whole life in 5 minutes. Rate Dante 110. Is he doing the right thing by scaring her, or should he have protected her better? And listen, the hit squad is minutes away. If you don't hit that subscribe button for Timeless K-Love right now, you might miss the moment Adana has to choose between running again or fighting back. Don't let her face the shooters alone. Hit subscribe. Join the resistance. Adana didn't argue. She didn't cry. The old Adana, the one who cooked soup for a cheating husband, might have cried. This Adana went into survival mode. 5 minutes, she said. She ran to the bedroom. She grabbed the diaper bag. She dumped out the toys and stuffed it with essentials, formula, diapers, warm clothes for Marcus. The cash Dante had just given her. She grabbed her own coat. She looked at the photo of her father on the dresser. She kissed it quickly, then shoved it in the bag. Dante was by the window, peeking through the blinds. The sun had set and the woods surrounding the house were pitch black. 2 cars, Dante announced, his voice tight. SUVs. Coming up the drive with their lights off. "How many men?" Adana asked, scooping Marcus out of his high chair. The baby made a noise of protest, but she shushed him, pressing his face into her shoulder. 6, maybe 8, Dante said. He turned to her. "We can't take the car. They'll block the driveway. We have to go out the back through the woods." "The woods?" Adana looked at her shoes. She was wearing slippers. "Dante, it's a swamp back there." "Better wet than dead," he said. He grabbed a heavy kitchen knife from the block and handed it to her. "Don't use it unless you have to. Stay behind me. If I start shooting, you run. You don't look back. You understand?" "I'm not leaving you," Adana said. Dante looked at her. For a second, his hard mask slipped. He looked terrified, not for himself, but for her. "Adana, please, for the boy." He didn't wait for an answer. He killed the lights in the kitchen. The house plunged into darkness. They moved to the back door. Dante opened it slowly. The crickets were chirping loudly, too loudly. They stepped out onto the porch. The air was thick and humid. Crunch. The sound of a twig snapping came from the side of the house. Dante spun, raising his gun. "Clear right," a voice shouted. Flashlights cut through the darkness, blinding beams sweeping across the porch. "Go," Dante yelled. He pushed Adana toward the tree line. He fired 2 shots. Bang, bang, the muzzle flashes lit up the night. A man screamed. Adana ran. She clutched Marcus to her chest with one arm, using the other to push branches out of her face. The ground was soft and muddy. Her slippers were sucked off her feet in seconds, but she kept running barefoot, the pine needles digging into her skin. Behind her, gunfire erupted. It sounded like a war zone. Automatic weapons. Rat-a-tat-tat. "Dante!" she screamed, looking back. She saw him duck behind the barbecue grill. He was returning fire, but he was pinned down. 3 men in tactical gear were advancing on the porch. She couldn't leave him, but she had Marcus. She saw a flicker of movement to her left. A man was flanking them, moving through the trees to cut her off. He hadn't seen her yet. He was focused on Dante. Adanna froze. She crouched behind a thick oak tree. Marcus started to whimper. She quickly put her finger in his mouth to soothe him, praying he wouldn't cry. The man walked past her tree. He was huge. He held a rifle. He was whispering into a headset. I have a visual on the target. The male is suppressed, moving to secure the female. He knew where she was going. Adanna looked at the knife in her hand. It was a chef's knife, sharp, deadly. She remembered the nights Ji-hyun had made her feel small. She remembered the fear. She remembered promising herself she would never be a victim again. She placed Marcus gently on the soft moss behind the tree roots. Stay, she mouthed. She stood up. The man was 10 feet away, his back to her. Adanna didn't think. She lunged. She didn't scream. Screaming gave you away. She moved silently, fueled by a mother's rage. She drove the knife into the man's thigh. He howled, dropping his rifle. He spun around, backhanding her. Adanna flew backward, hitting the dirt. Her jaw throbbed. The man was limping, blood gushing from his leg, but he was angry. He reached for a pistol on his belt. You little bitch, he growled. Adanna scrambled back. Her hand brushed against a rock, a heavy, jagged river rock. The man raised the gun. A single shot rang out. The man's head snapped back. He crumpled to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. Adanna gasped, looking toward the house. Dante was standing there, smoke rising from his gun. He had cleared the porch. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he was standing. He ran to her. He didn't say a word. He just scooped her up with one arm and grabbed Marcus with the other. We have to go, he said. More are coming. They ran through the woods for what felt like hours. They crossed a creek, the water icy cold against Adanna's bare feet. Finally, they reached an old logging road. A black sedan was waiting there, engine idling. Yours, Adanna panted, her lungs burning. Back up, Dante said. The window rolled down. It was the bouncer from the club, Tiny. You look like hell, boss, Tiny grinned. Shut up and drive, Dante said, throwing the back door open. They piled into the car. Adanna collapsed against the leather seat, pulling Marcus close. The baby was asleep. Miraculously, he had slept through the gunfire. Dante ripped a piece of his shirt off and pressed it against Adanna's bleeding feet. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Adanna looked at him. She reached up and touched the blood on his forehead. We're alive. Yeah, Dante said grimly, but we're not safe, not as long as Miller is breathing. The car sped onto the highway, heading north. Where are we going? Adanna asked. New York, Dante said. The only place I have enough men to protect you. And then what? Adanna asked. We hide in a basement forever. Dante looked out the window. His jaw was set tight. No, we stopped running. You took down a CEO. Now we're going to take down a senator. 2 days later, New York City, the safe house was a penthouse this time, but not like Ji-hyun's. This one was in Brooklyn, overlooking the bridge. It was industrial, full of exposed brick and steel. It's Dante's fortress. Adanna stood on the balcony, watching the traffic below. Marcus was in a playpen in the living room, surrounded by toys Tiny had bought. Dante walked out. He was wearing fresh clothes, black jeans, black t-shirt. The bandage on his head was small. How are the feet? He asked. Sore, Adanna said. She was wearing thick wool socks. But healing. We got a lead, Dante said. He leaned on the railing next to her. Miller is hosting a fundraiser tonight, a charity gala, high security. The press will be there. So, Dante turned to her. We can't kill him. If we kill a senator, the heat never dies. They'll hunt us to the ends of the earth. We have to destroy him. We have to make him untouchable. The ledger wasn't enough, Adanna said. The ledger was numbers, Dante said. People get bored of numbers. We need a voice. We need a victim. Adanna understood what he was asking. She looked at the city. She thought about the quiet life in Georgia that had been stolen from her. You want me to go there, she said. I can't ask you to do that, Dante said. It's dangerous. Miller will have shooters everywhere, but if you walk onto that stage, if you tell your story live in front of the cameras, he can't touch you. If he hurts you after that, he proves he's guilty. And if he shoots me before I get to the microphone, Dante took her hand. He brought it to his lips. I won't let that happen. I'll be your shadow. Tiny, the boys, will all be there. We'll clear a path. But you have to walk it. Adanna closed her eyes. She was tired of fighting. She just wanted to be a mom, but she knew Dante was right. Monsters like Miller didn't stop until you cut off their heads. Okay, she said. I'll do it, but I need a dress. Dante smiled. I think we can find a dress. The gala, the ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, was dripping in gold. Chandeliers sparkled. Waiters in white tuxedos moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. Senator Miller stood on a raised platform, smiling, shaking hands. He was an older man with silver hair and a grandfatherly face. He looked kind. Adanna knew better. She stood at the back of the room. She was wearing a red dress, not a soft, romantic red, a blood red, sharp, dangerous. It fit her like armor. Dante was beside her, wearing a tuxedo. He looked like James Bond if James Bond had neck tattoos. He had an earpiece in. "Team is in position," he whispered. "Tiny has the exits. Marco has the lights." "I'm ready," Adanna said. Her heart was beating so fast she felt dizzy. "Just walk," Dante said. "I'm right here." Adanna stepped forward. Senator Miller tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Tonight is about justice. It's about safety." Adanna walked through the crowd. People turned to stare. The dress demanded attention. The look on her face demanded silence. "Excuse me," she said, pushing past a donor. She reached the stairs to the stage. A security guard stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, you can't be up here." Dante appeared out of nowhere. He didn't hit the guard, he just grabbed his shoulder and squeezed. "She has an invitation." The guard flinched and stepped back. Adanna walked up the stairs. The click of her heels echoed in the sudden silence. Senator Miller frowned. "Who are you?" Adanna walked right up to him. She didn't take the microphone. She just stood there, staring him in the eye. "I'm the loose end," she said. The room gasped. Adanna turned to the microphone. She looked out at the sea of faces. The cameras were flashing. The red lights of the news crews were on. "My name is Adanna," she said. Her voice didn't shake. 3 years ago, my husband, Ji-hyun, murdered my father to cover a gambling debt. He paid a man to cut the brake lines of a 2010 Toyota Camry." She pointed at Miller. "And that man," she said, her voice rising, "took $50,000 from my husband to make the police investigation disappear. That man is Senator Robert Miller." The room erupted. Shouts, gasps. Miller's face turned purple. "Lies, get this woman off the stage. She's crazy." Security guards rushed the stage. "Now," Dante yelled into his mic. Suddenly, the massive screen behind the stage flickered. The charity logo disappeared. A video played. It was the recording from the flash drive, but not the golf club video. This was a phone call recording, Ji-hyun on the phone. "Senator, the girl is asking questions." "Handle it, Lee." "I don't care how. Make her disappear like her old man. I'm not losing my seat over a dead mechanic." The voice was unmistakable. It was Miller. The ballroom went deathly silent. Miller froze. He looked at the screen, then at Adanna. "You!" he hissed. He reached inside his jacket. Dante was there in a split second. He kicked Miller's legs out from under him. Miller hit the stage with a thud. A small pistol skidded across the floor. "Gun!" someone screamed. Chaos broke out. People ran for the exits. Dante put a boot on Miller's chest. He looked down at the senator. "It's over, Bob," Dante said. Adanna stood over him. She looked down at the man who had ordered her death. "You can't buy this one," she said. Sirens wailed outside. The real police were coming, not the paid ones. Dante grabbed Adanna's hand. "Curtain call, let's go." They ran off the stage, through the kitchen, and out the back service entrance where the car was waiting. They jumped in. Tiny gunned the engine. As they sped away, Adanna looked back at the hotel. She saw the police cars swarming the entrance. She saw Miller being let out in handcuffs on the news feed on her phone. She laughed. It started as a giggle, then turned into a full belly laugh. Tears streamed down her face. "We did it," she choked out. Dante pulled her into his arms. He held her tight. "Yeah, we did." 1 year later, the beach was quiet. The waves rolled in gently, turquoise water lapping against white sand. It wasn't Georgia. It wasn't New York. It was an island where nobody knew their names. Adanna sat in a beach chair, watching Marcus toddle toward the water. He was walking now, stumbling on his chubby legs. Dante was walking beside him, holding his hand. He was wearing swim trunks, his scars exposed to the sun. He looked younger. The lines of stress around his eyes had softened. He picked Marcus up and swung him around. The boy squealed with delight. Adanna smiled. She touched the small bump on her stomach. Another one. A little girl this time. Dante walked back up the sand, carrying Marcus on his shoulders. He sat down next to her. "He tried to eat a crab," Dante reported. "He takes after his father," Adanna teased. "Always hungry." Dante leaned over and kissed her. It was a slow, lazy kiss, a kiss that said they had nowhere to be and nothing to run from. "Miller got life without parole," Dante said. "News came in this morning." "Good," Adanna said. She didn't feel the rush of victory anymore. Just relief. "What about us? Are we still ghosts?" Dante looked at her. He put his hand on her stomach. "No," he said. "We're real. We're right here." Adana rested her head on his shoulder. She watched the sun dip below the horizon. She had been a victim. She had been a survivor. She had been a fugitive. Now, finally, she was just Adana, loved, safe, and free. She closed her eyes and listened to the ocean. It sounded like the future.